Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And 10 for the Win is back for season number 2. Yay. Anyways, let's get this started. Like any industry that features a wealth of huge personalities and huge egos, the pro wrestling business has seen its fair share of backstage beefs.
Now, we covered this topic back when we started doing wrestling top 10s years back, so you're wondering where Bret and Shawn are at, or Edge and Matt Hardy, go watch that other video. We'll put the link in the description below. But really, there are so many examples of wrestlers having issues with each other that we decided to do another list.
So here you go. Here are 10 more real-life wrestling feuds.
Number 10.
Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's final days as an in-ring competitor in WWE wound down in the year 2005. He had a small handful of forgettable matchups and one absolute classic for all the wrong reasons against Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam.
But unlike his huge WrestleMania match against The Rock a few years prior, he had zero intention on passing any more torches. Although his physical decline was evident, his backstage politicking was never stronger, brother.
That's right. According to Shawn Michaels in a 2014 interview, he had been told that Hogan had agreed to a best-of-3 series with the Heartbreak Kid, but somehow that magically turned into one single match.
Brother.
And Hogan backed out of the other 2 matches, one of which was supposed to be a Michaels win. And of course, Hogan insisted on beating HBK in their lone bout.
Brother. So HBK made sure it was a win worth remembering, as he oversold the shit out of every move the Hulkster doled out. He was flipping over turnbuckles, pratfalling out of the ring. It was a total clown show, and it was great.
Yeah. Now, there were conflicting stories from each side about the entire ordeal. Hogan claims that he shut the feud down after one match because Michaels was being disrespectful in his promos. Michaels claims that Hogan said he was cool with all the promo stuff in the build, but he really wasn't. And of course, years later, when both would talk about the incident, they would compliment each other because they're old now and bitter's not a great look for anyone.
Unless you're Bret Hart, maybe. But for one amazing match, you could actually see wrestling's 2 biggest egos on display on the second grandest stage of them all. Hogan had one more match in WWE the following year against the hot up-and-comer, the legend killer himself, Randall Orton.
And of course, who won that one, Larson?
Not the legend killer, Randall Orton.
Number 9.
Alexa Bliss versus Sasha Banks. One day a book should be written explaining what in the hell Alexa Bliss did to Sasha Banks to trigger the kind of animosity we've seen since their days in NXT together. No one besides the 2 women in question here seem to know exactly what the root of the beef is, but we may be able to draw some conclusions from various statements made by both Bliss and Banks.
Even though that's kind of difficult because they're both active wrestlers who have been involved in feuds with each other, and obviously lots of what's said could be considered a work, shit talk meant to bring heat to their matches.
Yeah, for example, Sasha's appearance on the Great Balls of Fire post-show went way further than a normal post-show match interview usually goes. Renee asks Sasha about Alexa, and Sasha launches into a tirade about how fake Alexa is, claiming that Alexa wouldn't know the difference between Matt and Jeff Hardy. Seems pretty clear, actually.
Yeah.
And how she came into the WWE like it was a Hollywood gig.
And earlier that evening, Dana Brooke added some fuel to the speculation on the pre-show when she said that the 2 despise each other, and when one walks into the room, the other leaves. Sure, come back.
Oh, sorry.
Sure, it could have just been Dana helping build the match. Something seemed just a bit too real about what she said.
Yeah, on top of that, there's been endless tweets and subtweets at each other, sometimes when they're not even in a feud. Alexa at one point even blocked Sasha on Twitter, so you know that's real. That's real beef.
Real beef.
Yeah. And there's been chippy moments between the 2 in the ring, but like not in ways that drive any stories. Because these moments just seem to be pointed out by fans on Twitter or people who are in attendance. They take fan video and they're like, hey, look at that. What's that weird punch that was just thrown right there?
That's a stiff shot right there.
Yeah. Seemingly, Sasha has just had it out for Alexa since their NXT days, and Alexa responds in kind.
Obviously, they need to go on Maury Povich and have him mediate all this. And while they're there, I guess if they need to, they can find out who the real dad is.
Yeah, Alexa, who is your real dad? Sorry, I just wanted to activate some friendos Alexas. Alexa, play Return of the Mac.
Number 8.
CM Punk versus Hulk Hogan. Granted, this one seems to be a fairly one-sided affair, at least publicly, but make no mistake about it. CM Punk does not like Hulk Hogan. he wouldn't be alone in those sentiments because we almost did this entire episode about wrestlers who had beef with just the Hulkster. But you're probably asking yourself, why, Phil, why?
Why? Well, according to Hogan, it all stems from the Raw 15th anniversary episode from 2007 when Punk, who was then ECW champion, felt that he was snubbed by Hogan backstage.
Brother.
Hogan claimed on the Stone Cold podcast that he was going through some serious shit and didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but
regardless if that's what's caused the heat, Punk was vocal throughout the years about his dislike for Hogan. In 2010, he told a radio station that Hogan only joined TNA to benefit himself and didn't care about the business. Only Hogan. In 2015, Punk tweeted to Hogan, "Shut the fuck up or I'll wreck you," after the Hulkster talked some lame trash about hockey stuff. And most recently, Punk said on Windy City Live, quote, "I was never a Hogan guy. I've met him and like him even less now. Fuck him." Wow.
Well, beyond some crap jab about selling out Madison Square Garden while old Phil was in diapers, Hogan has shied away from publicly talking crap about Punk, but as we know with Hogan, his true feelings come out when cameras aren't rolling, at least when he thinks cameras aren't rolling.
Number 7.
Simon Gotch versus Enzo Amore. YouTube works in mysterious ways sometimes. When I say sometimes, I mean always. No one really knows, though, why Simon Gotch buries Enzo Amore became the basically only video wrestling YouTube recommended to everyone a few years back. You'd have to ask the algorithm that.
Sorry to disappoint you, Steve, but no one has any idea how the YouTube algorithm works. Not even the engineers at YouTube know!
That's true.
But the mysterious code was probably somewhat responsible for a relatively innocuous shoot interview blowing up all over the place. And why were they beefing again?
So it's kind of unclear, but Simon said in that aforementioned shoot interview that Enzo wasn't a good wrestler. But then Enzo shot back in a shoot interview of his own, kind of a response, saying that Gotch's boobs looked weird or something, and he would always make fun of him for that.
Yeah, it definitely came off as a one-sided beef win for Simon Gotch, because how would he possibly know how huge that video would blow up? He just came off like a guy telling how it was. Enzo, on the other hand, just seemed like he was pulling lame insults out of his butt in response to Gotch's claims that he wasn't a good wrestler.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising no one has actually been able to book this beef as an actual match. You'd think the buzz alone would lead to a sellout. I'd watch that shit, that's for sure.
Yeah, I would too. All you need for the poster are all those YouTube thumbnails, man.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Alberto Del Rio versus Triple H. So, to be fair to Alberto Del Rio, his beef with the game seemed to stem from the way Alberto was fired from the WWE back in late 2014. As the story goes, one of WWE's social media guys made a shitty, racist, derogatory remark about Del Rio cleaning his plate in catering at a SmackDown taping. Del Rio found out, went over to the racist piece of shit and slapped the crap out of him, sending him to the floor. Racist shitheel threatened to sue WWE if they didn't fire Alberto, and Triple H was the guy who had to make that call to Alberto.
Del Rio explained the phone call and appearance on the Conan podcast, Keeping It 100, saying that Triple H said, "Hey, lay low. We'll bring you back when the heat dies down, but we gotta fire you now." They did, in fact, bring him back in 2015, but that lasted a little bit less than a year as he failed the wellness policy test in late 2016, which led him to opting out of his contract and leaving for good.
That led Del Rio to pioneer a brand new genre of entertainment, drunken rants about Triple H Periscope videos. Twice in 2017, Del Rio was filmed on Periscope by his then girlfriend Paige, where he referred to Triple H as the guy with the big nose and claimed that Game had no balls. He called him a lot of other bad names, once during a spirited round of karaoke.
That was Del Rio's voice. Triple H never chimed in on Del Rio's drunken rants, and Alberto publicly apologized to Triple H a year later, but then ran down his at the point ex-girlfriend Paige on Instagram.
Yeah, maybe just don't run people down in public. Slapping racists, I can get behind that. That's good babyface heat right there. Running down Triple H and Paige on social media, and that's got go away heat for Steve.
Hey, be careful. Del Rio might be inspired to start a new form of entertainment. Instagram stories featuring Del Rio calling Steve a bendejo.
Whoa, man.
What does that mean?
Fool, idiot.
Okay.
Actually, it's really not that far away from the truth, so whatever.
Number 5.
Scott Steiner versus Hulk Hogan. It's not surprising that some people would have taken issue with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff coming into TNA back in 2010 and taking control. Because once they got there, they made a lot of changes.
Oh yeah, apparently CM Punk wasn't the only guy who felt Hogan made TNA worse. Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner did too. He probably thought Hogan made it like 166 and 2/3% worse.
Your chances of winning drastically go down.
The big bad booty daddy was having a bit of a career renaissance in TNA with the main event Mafia angle, the stuff with smaller Papa Pump Petey Williams, his Samoa Joe feud, and of course Steiner math.
I got a 66 and 2/3 chance of winning.
So once Hogan came in, Steiner was gone. And not only did he leave, he burned it down on the way out, taking to Twitter in 2012 to run down the Hulkster for basically turning TNA into the Titanic.
Funny thing about Steiner's comments about Hogan in TNA, they were all absolutely correct.
Freakzilla was totally right.
Totally right. Hogan buried a lot of the good work TNA was putting together, and by the time he left in 2013, the company was in a much worse spot.
Yeah, in super typical Hogan fashion, he even politicked a crappier main event finish to TNA's biggest pay-per-view of the year in 2011 than the one that was previously planned. Days prior to the show, he went on the radio to promote it and ran down Bobby Roode, who was supposed to take the world title off Kurt Angle in the main event. And then it was reported that Hogan did indeed have the finish changed so that Angle would retain it in controversial fashion. So yeah, Steiner was basically calling it like it was. Hogan was a parasite in TNA.
Anyway, Steiner didn't stop there, and since that Hogan was chosen to induct Macho Man Randy Savage into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2015, he, for some reason, saw it fit to confront Hogan's wife at the airport when he saw her to tell her it was bullshit that Hogan was inducting Savage because Steiner alleged Savage hated Hogan till the day that he passed away. This prompted a police investigation, and Steiner was banned from the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony. And in fact, Wrestling Inc. obtained this picture of the security area, and right there's Steiner's picture.
Oh, there it is. Wait, hold on a second now.
What?
There was a police investigation to determine if Savage hated Hogan till the day he died?
No, Steiner was alleged to have made a death threat.
Oh, wow. Oh, man, yeah, that is pretty bad. Anyways, nothing came of that investigation, but to this day, whenever Steiner is asked about Hogan, the words or are often used in his response.
Why do we beep those?
Because I don't know what the words are. They're always beeped. Steiner gets beeped a lot.
Number 4.
Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan. 20 years before Hulk Hogan went on the radio to run down Bobby Roode as a potential champion, Hulk Hogan went on the radio to run down Bret Hart as a champion. Thus began the real-life, on-again, off-again beef between Hulk Hogan and the Hitman Bret Hart.
After Hogan's retirement match at WrestleMania 8, Hogan went off to do Hollywood stuff. When all he could land was a pile of crap movie called Mr. Nanny, Hogan realized that maybe Hollywood wasn't ready for Hulkamania, brother. And decided to come back and book himself to win the WWF title, even though clearly the WWF was trying to move on from Hulkamania, brother.
In advance of his comeback, during a press interview for the UK release of Mr. Nanny, Hogan ran down the current WWF champion, Bret Hart. Specifically, he said, "I don't just want to go wrestle, I want to win the belt back. I want to be the champion. They've got a guy named Bret the Hitman Hart who's champion now. I could beat him with my eyes closed. He couldn't even lace my boots up." Mind you, Hogan wasn't in the WWF at the time.
Wow. According to Bret, Hogan not only talked Vince into pulling off the WrestleMania 9 screw job that concluded with Hogan exacting revenge on behalf of Bret against Yokozuna for cheating to keep his title by ordering a new match started with himself taking the title off Yokozuna, but he also refused to do the job for Bret at the following SummerSlam after promising he would at the aforementioned Mania screw job.
No wonder Bret hated the guy. Anyways, the years haven't been kind to their beef. Every once in a while, Bret will get a 24-inch python-sized stick up his ass and blast Hogan publicly. For example, in 2011, Bret tweeted this in response to a fan asking his thoughts on Hogan. Quote, "Hogan's nothing but a two-faced backstabbing steroid freak who deserved everything he got." Wow.
The lesson here, if Bret Hart and Scott Steiner are to be believed, being in the NWO is not for life, or is it too sweet? Neither of those things.
It's a bummer, man. I always figured being in the NWO would be just too sweet, brother.
Man, I'm right. I've been right this whole time.
Too sweet, man.
Not gonna happen.
Number 3.
Chris Benoit versus Kevin Sullivan. All right, so we have to dispense with the lulls for a moment here, man, because we're about to talk about Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and the infamous angle that changed the entire pro wrestling industry forever.
Back in 1996, while the NWO was the hottest thing in wrestling, WCW booker Kevin Sullivan was putting together one of the most compelling angles in the company, known for blurring the line between story and real life. Sullivan handpicked 4 Horsemen member Chris Benoit for an angle where Sullivan's on-screen and off-screen wife, Nancy, aka Woman, turns on Sullivan's Taskmaster character and joins not just the Horsemen, but Benoit as his love interest.
Yeah, the angle was a slow burn that took place over many months, and Sullivan, ensuring kayfabe was kept intact, insisted that his wife and Benoit travel together and share hotel rooms together. So they did, and somewhere along the way, whoo boy, shit got real. As in, Benoit and Nancy actually started having an affair, and she left the Taskmaster for the Crippler.
Yeah, obviously this complicated matters for all three, and the feud between Benoit and Sullivan definitely got real. But exactly how heated the real-life beef got is a bit cloudy. There was a pull-apart fight in a bar between Benoit and Sullivan during this period, although Eric Bischoff claims only Sullivan knows whether or not that was real or just a means to generate buzz.
Yeah, Benoit infers in the WWE DVD Hard Knocks, the Chris Benoit story, that he felt Sullivan, being the Booker man, held him back once the affair was found out. Eventually, Benoit felt he would never advance past a certain point with Sullivan in power and bolted for the WWE, even after a last-ditch attempt by Sullivan to placate Benoit by putting the world title on him.
Sullivan nowadays credits Benoit with giving him the best matches of his career, speaks highly of him in light of the tragedy that would take place in 2007, which obviously had been awful for him as well, given that he was married to Nancy for 8 years prior to their breakup.
Yeah, you just have to wonder though, had Benoit and Nancy not been picked for that angle, or had they not been together in real life, would Benoit have been groomed to be the centerpiece of WCW's future? Given the Hogan thing, probably not, but you never know. Certainly Nancy's life wouldn't have ended in such a tragic way, and maybe the industry would look a lot different than it does now.
Number 2.
Eric Bischoff versus Ric Flair. It was fairly obvious just by watching WCW in the late 90s just how dysfunctional their company was. One didn't need to know what or who the Wrestling Observer was to get the feeling that this shit was on the verge of falling apart at the seams at any moment.
Either it was Bret Hart's soul-sucked demeanor upon his WCW debut, or Hulk Hogan confusingly pinning a prone Jeff Jarrett as the head writer of the show awkwardly blasted Hogan verbally. WCW was obviously not built to last.
No, not really.
No.
But nowhere was this evident more than the real-life feud between Ric Flair and Eric Bischoff, stemming from Flair declining to show up on an episode of Thunder because he wanted to see his 9-year-old son Reed wrestle.
Forgetting that no one gave a shit about Thunder in the first place, Flair's point was basically that he hadn't been used on TV in weeks, and all of a sudden, they want him to go on the WCW B show to announce the new 4 Horsemen.
Yeah, you'd think they'd find a few minutes on the 3-hour Nitro broadcast for seemingly such a momentous announcement. But no, they needed the Nature Boy for Thunder.
Flair's no-show led to Eric Bischoff and WCW filing a lawsuit against Nate, which was a wild overreaction on the part of Bischoff. The lawsuit dragged on for months before WCW finally dropped it, which led to an epic return from Flair and famously declared,
To be honest, that segment was probably far cooler than whatever they had planned on Thunder.
Oh yeah.
Because it was Thunder, but that's not the end of it. Flair and Bischoff eventually patched things up, had some matches, all was well, until Flair randomly decided to fight Eric Bischoff 4 years later, backstage at a WWE Raw taping.
Yeah, this story has been told 2 ways, once in Flair's book and once on Bischoff's podcast, but the gist is, Flair just randomly decided in 2002 that Bischoff needed some payback for how much money Flair had spent on the lawsuit 4 years prior, so he jumped him, threw some wild punches that didn't land, threatened to take one of Bischoff's eyes out, and then Sergeant Slaughter came in to break it all up.
Yeah, this happened like 2 days after Flair and Bischoff had literally gone out for drinks together, so the timing was bizarre to say the least. Vince brought them in to mediate the beef, and all parties agreed to never mention that it ever happened. Surprisingly, neither man did mention it for like 15 years, and now we all know the various versions of the story. Larson, which one do you believe? Eric Bischoff's version of the story or Ric Flair's version of the story?
Neither.
That's correct. That's the correct answer. It's neither. They're both liars.
Number 1.
CM Punk versus Triple H. So it was plainly obvious during the summer of Punk that the game and the best in the world did not like each other. Whether it was Punk calling Hunter a doofus during his infamous pipe bomb promo, or giving him super cry face when he mentioned Triple H's starring role in The Chaperone.
Mine went straight to DVD just like yours.
during a contract signing between himself and John Cena in advance of SummerSlam 2011, you could totally see that these two had some serious beef.
But if Jim Ross is to be believed, Triple H's beef with CM Punk had to do with his ass. According to good old JR, the cerebral assassin thought Punk's ass was too big and that Phil looked too soft to be a WWE champion, yet Punk had the belt for like a year or more.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Punk apparently held the grudge against Triple H for beating him for basically no good reason during his super hot run, Summer Punk 2011, killing his momentum. But then again, Punk would later have the belt for more than a year.
Yeah, funniest bit to me though was when Triple H pitched Sheamus. Yes, Sheamus to be the face of the company instead of Punk. Now, Sheamus is a good hand, a capable worker, and at the time had one of the best themes in WWE. Lobster Head was pure genius.
Too many lines in it though.
But he's not face of the company material. CM Punk absolutely was.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like the game was off his game in this instance. They kind of tried to roll with Sheamus as top guy for a bit after he beat Daniel Bryan in 18 seconds at Mania 28, but of course that went over like a wet fart. Anyway, since then Triple H has developed NXT into maybe the best pro wrestling brand in the world, and CM Punk got himself a pretty plum gig over on WWE Backstage, so I guess it worked out for everybody in the end.
No way, man. Not till we see Punk versus Triple H at Mania. Mark my words, WrestleMania 37, that's gonna happen.
Not unless Vince really opens up that checkbook.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's it for 10 for the win this week. Be sure to sub to the channel and smash that like button. You can also find new 10 for the win shirts at friendomerch.com.
And of course, check out our first video about real life pro wrestling feuds. You can click on the link in the description down there.
There should be a thing right here also, yeah. We shot it like 4 years ago and we look 10 years younger. Apparently our real life feud is with Time, Larson.
Oh, Father Time.
He's a son of a bitch.
You will get your comeuppance someday. Probably not.